Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I am your host, Frank LaRosa, and I'm excited for today's episode. We're going to be talking about growing your business through planning and small to mid-sized M&A activity. And I'm joined here today by two exciting guests. I think it's going to be very interesting. We're going to try to keep it to less than 45 minutes. Something tells me we're going to fail at that one.
Good luck.
That's okay. I know, right? Good luck.
Sure.
I got Russ Jones, which is sitting right next to me. So if you're new to the show and you're listening to us on Apple or iTunes, don't forget to check us out on our YouTube channel, which is Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Russ Jones, sitting here right next to me, is the Executive Director of the Private Wealth Service Group at Lincoln Financial Advisors. And then Dan Prisciotta, which is drinking some coffee over here, he's a former CPA, a financial advisor.
Fully recovered,
right? And the CEO of a group called Equity Strategies Group that works with small to mid-sized companies, works with advisors, and helping through M&A transactions. Yep. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, that if I was an advisor in today's world, this is something I'd be focused on. So I was happy to be at an event maybe a month or two ago at Lincoln across the river, and I was introduced to Russ. Dan, you weren't there, but I was introduced to Russ, and I'm like, man, I didn't know that Lincoln has these types of services, because this is a huge way to gather assets. And if you're a financial advisor, one of the things that you should lose sleep over every night is how are you going to find new clients and bring in new assets, right? And the days of seminars, are challenging and all that. So there's got to be better ways to do that. And I know that there are a lot of clients out there, a lot of investors that have, I'll say like myself, but small business owners where most of their wealth is tied up in their companies. Right?
Absolutely.
And so eventually there's going to be some type of transaction, and why shouldn't it be you as a financial advisor that gets involved in that? But the challenge is, and I think this is what we're going to talk about a little bit today, is some financial advisors, or many financial advisors, are at firms that really can't dip their toe in this water the way they could if they were at Lincoln. And so today's really conversation is thinking about this type of activity to bring big assets in, and then also why Lincoln is a potentially right firm if you're thinking about making a move as an advisor. Why you should be considering Lincoln for some of the capabilities that you probably are really not aware of that Lincoln has. So with that said, I know that's a really long introduction, but I love this topic. So we're definitely gonna have a hard time saying 45 minutes. That's okay. It's gonna be chock full of great nuggets and really business development stuff. So if you're an advisor and you listen to this, you probably need to, if you're in the car, pull over, because you're going to need to take notes, because this episode is really going to add some serious dollars to your business. So Russ, why don't we just start with you and just introduce yourself. You're, again, as a director at Lincoln, how long have you been there? What is your primary role there? And then we'll have Dan introduce himself and talk about the books that you wrote and all that great stuff. So
give or take 40 years, most of it in management. I do have my own practice, probably 30 clients, tend to be in that $50 million and above net worth range. So we charge fees, we do comprehensive holistic planning, and the group that I head up, the Private Wealth Services Group, does the same thing. There's about 200 advisors within Lincoln that focus on that high net worth market. They tend to have the highest GDC, call it roughly beginning at $1 million and above. And what we do at the Private Wealth Group is provide them the back office support in order to acquire that new client, that new 25, 50, 100 million, whatever dollar client. That's our job, is to get people like Dan prepped to show the difference between what we do and what they've had done. And it doesn't matter whether you're in the bank channel, the wirehouse channel, the independent channel. There's nobody providing that kind of support to those kinds of advisors. So when we say that we're different, we're really this best kept secret in the industry.
Yeah.
Very few people understand the difference between an engagement proposal that looks like a 4-color glossy brochure and one that engages a high net worth individual and shows them the difference between what they have and what they could have. So that's really my role, and the team that I head up at Lincoln is to support guys like Dan go into that market and securing new clients. That's the $1 million like bogey, if you will,
Sure.
in the industries. How do I sit in front of somebody and show them that I'm different, real time, first meeting?
Right.
And that's what we do with people.
Now, you made a comment. I'm going to ask you this because I know that half the audience is keyed in on this thing.
Yes.
You said we charge fees for planning.
Yeah.
That's something that everybody talks about. They want to
Not just an AUM percentage.
Right. Everyone dreams of that, right? And I think that's where the industry is starting to go. RIAs are doing that more.
Oh gosh.
Give me an example.
We've been there as a firm since the early 80s.
Right. What kind of fees are you charging? Like $2,000?
Yeah.
No.
Nothing close to that. So here's the deal. It's not what you know, it's what you do with what you know. Right? It's not that people can charge fees, it's do you know how to go out and charge fees? So you have to show somebody the value, or you would be crazy to charge them a fee. Hey, we charge $5,000. Okay, well, I don't see any value. Why would I hire you? If, on the other hand, I see the value, you can charge whatever that fee is. Here's our scripted, and if I asked Dan to do this, he would do it virtually the same. We charge 10 to 20 basis points of a person's net worth, exclusive of their insurance. If you're worth $10 million, it's $10,000 to $20,000. So the script would be, based on the discussion that we've had, you're more complex or less complex, it's going to be closer to the 10 or it's going to be closer to the 20. The highest fee that I've charged, I think our firm has charged higher, but $125,000 to do the plan.
Wow.
This is not AUM fee.
Yeah.
This is to do the estate, business, investment planning, the philanthropic, multi-generational, that entire comprehensive plan stuff that everybody talks about, but almost nobody does, is what we do. That's why we're the best kept secret.
All right.
I'd say the minimum fees for most advisors, they set the minimum somewhere around $10,000 or $20,000.
If it's in that high net worth.
If it's in the high net worth market. And part of the confidence to charge those kinds, and the fees easily get up to 50. I'm working on one now where I had to keep it under 100. It's 99.5. But this is going to be, and the fee, sometimes we phase it. We do the engagement in stages.
Right.
But average fees, I'm finding these days, my minimum is $25,000 on my actual engagements, and they go up from 25 to 50. But guys are charging 6-figure fees. It's not only knowing what to say, how to say it, and having the confidence. It's also knowing that there's the horsepower behind the scenes to get the work done.
Right.
And as an advisor, I can say to a client, we've reviewed more wills, trusts, tax returns, buy-sell agreements, split-dollar agreements than probably all the law firms and accounting firms in the tri-state area. And we've got a lot of these folks in-house in Russ's planning department that I know as an advisor, can I read a will and trust? Yes. Can I read a buy-sell? Yes. Probably better than most people, but it's not always the best use of my time. So when I pick those documents up at the beginning of an engagement, yes, I'm gonna give them a once-over so I can just kind of gauge, okay, what's here, what's not.
Idea.
And then I send it up to the planning department. These guys are going to dissect it, flow chart it, summarize it, find all of the holes. And then now I'm like, oh, great. I am loaded for bear for the next meeting with that client. Right. And then moreover, helping us with the modeling, the design, the recommendations. I don't feel as though I'm out in the field alone. Right. I know I have a team behind me.
Yeah, I think that's
supporting.
I think that is, it's what you're saying, sort of like you have the support behind it. That's where I think a lot of advisors not fail, but don't want to start because they don't have the confidence that if the, God forbid, the client says yes, then they go, what do I do?
You got to deliver.
And
I don't want to go into a black hole and spend 9 months on one plan. That's not being a good business person. So you got to juggle all these engagements and give every client the utmost attention that they deserve. And you have to leverage yourself by using our planning team. And that's how we leverage our time.
So Dan, you, so tell us a little about your background. You wrote 4 books.
I wrote 4 books, yes.
So maybe a little bit about those books that are specific to this area. So you don't, like you're actually living, breathing this you're an advisor, you're in the trenches,
I
you're
am an
having these
advisor.
conversations.
Yes.
And then you're also working with advisors to help them have those conversations.
That's
So
right.
just give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. So I started my career with Pricewaterhouse and then came into the financial services world 35 years ago. And when I came in, I didn't go into sales directly. I was in various staff roles, management, and ultimately became the managing director for the four offices in the New York, New Jersey metro region. And then woke up one day and said, you know what, this was a terrific ride. I've learned a lot. I enjoyed being in leadership. But my real passion is working with clients. Moreover, when I look at the landscape and I say, okay, I can choose to work with professionals, doctors, dentists, lawyers. I can choose to work with corporate executives, or I can choose to work with the business owner market. I immediately gravitated towards the business owner market. That's where most of this nation's wealth is. They tend to be very decisive people. If you can show them a problem, show them how to fix it, they tend to act on it. I just enjoy working with business owners. And they need this help sorely. They're not getting it in English from their other advisors. So I targeted the business owner market, and this was about 20 years ago. And what I found when I went out and started prospecting and meeting with clients, they would say to me, hey, Dan, you're talking about all this family business succession. My kids don't want it, or my kids are not up to the task, or, gee, I want a liquidity event. Can you help me? And the answer 20 years ago was a resounding no. We didn't do investment banking. We didn't do mergers and acquisitions at Lincoln. So I kind of hatched the idea, went to Lincoln Senior Management, had a number of meetings over the course of a year with the broker-dealer, compliance, legal. And finally, Lincoln said, you know what, Dan, we're going to allow you to do this for your clients. I said, terrific. And started my firm, kind of firm within a firm called Equity Strategies Group, where we help business owners and their financial advisors to design and then to implement the best exit strategy for them. And we'll come back to the implementation. That's how we've developed this national network of investment banks and M&A firms to actually execute transactions. But Lincoln then asked me, hey, Dan, when they saw I was having some success with this, would you build out this platform and make it available to the entire country? So thousands of advisors within the Lincoln Financial Network. And I now have several partners. I have Derek Ferreira on the West Coast. I have Emmerich Steller in the Mid-Atlantic region. And we have our own team and all of the investment bankers we work with. So that's how it started. That's how it grew to where it is today, where we see a constant flow of opportunities coming from our advisory, field force, where they have these clients that need the types of services that we offer.
And so tell us about the 4 books that you wrote.
So the first 2 books really was, the title is Defend Your Wealth. And I wrote it when I first started my practice. I was very active with Russ in Private Wealth Services. I was on faculty. I was, an advisor in the field, attracted actually some joint work with other folks in private wealth. And Defend Your Wealth encapsulated everything that I've learned over the years with Lincoln Financial Advisors on how to do a high net worth planning engagement, including advanced estate planning and business succession. So I wrote Defend Your Wealth 1 in 2011. Laws changed, as they frequently do, so I wrote a second edition to it. Then in 2016, I wrote One Way Out, How to Grow, Protect, and Exit from Your Business, which is really a handbook, a how-to manual on how to work with that business owner. And it covers the entire gamut of business owner planning, from growth strategies to protection strategies, buy-sell agreements, things of that nature. And of course, I couldn't help myself, so I had to throw a chapter on estate planning as well, particularly for the business owner.
Sure.
And then most recently, December of 2022, I wrote the long-awaited sequel called One Way Out, the Case Studies. And what I did there, Frank, was I reflected on all of the transactions that ESG has done on behalf of our clients and our advisors. And I picked what I thought were the 17 coolest, most transferable, that had lessons that we can all learn from. Wow. And I took those case studies, and each one became a chapter. So each chapter in the book is, okay, here's the client, here are their goals, here's the challenges, here's what the journey looked like to help them sell their business for maximum value, and then here's the results. The life the client is now leading, and also all the implementation that the advisor was able to garner as a result of closing that transaction. Now, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars of AUM, insurance opportunities, alternative investments, everything that flows from it.
To the advisor.
Absolutely. You're taking a client who his biggest balance sheet item is his closely held business, which is highly illiquid. And now we're helping that client monetize it. So now you're taking, 20 to 100 million plus, less capital gains taxes and so forth, that now needs to be put to work.
All right.
And that advisor is perfectly
positioned. What is in the market that you tend to do best in? Like 10 to 100 million in terms of the size of the deal size?
Yeah, we're in what we call the lower middle market. So that's a business with an enterprise value of, call it 15 million to infinity. I mean, we're literally working with a client now that's got almost $1 billion business. But I'd say the sweet spot is 25 million to 100 million.
Right.
So we're below, the Wall Street firms. We're not running into Goldman Sachs.
Right.
We're not running.
Your nose
No, and we're not doing business. We're not doing mom and pop retail. So it's above that, but it's below, the $1 billion, generally speaking, deals. And that's where I find most financial advisors operate. That entrepreneurial business. The guy started up 30 or 40 years ago. He's thinking about an exit. Hey, can you help me, do this?
So do you, and I don't know if this is a Russ question or you question, do you find that transaction and maybe the relationship, the revenue, the AUM starts with the M&A conversation, or does it start with the planning conversation and leads to an M&A conversation?
Planning oriented.
I ask that question because right now my audience is thinking, hey, this is awesome, right? I want to do this, right? But don't know where to start.
It's a plan. It's not a transaction.
That's exactly right. So almost all of the Lincoln advisors and the private wealth service advisors in particular start as a relationship on the comprehensive holistic planning that we charge a fee for. And that leads over time to a trusting relationship between that client and that advisor. Ultimately, it does come up. Everybody eventually is going to succeed that business. Either they drop dead and the business transfers, or their kids come into the business, or they're selling it, or there's whatever. So one way or another, that's going to come up. When it does come up, that have an outlet like a Dan Prisciotta and the Equity Strategies Group allows us to take advantage of that and bring a really valuable service to that business owner that they can't get because they don't trust anybody else. Everything else is a brand new relationship. Oh, let's have Goldman, whoever have, whatever investment banking firm, let's have them come in and we'll talk to you about what we think we can do for that business. They're going to know that client the way that a Dan Prisciotta or financial advisor is going to know because of that 5, 10, 20-year relationship they have.
Right.
So here's the statistics. Okay, what percentage of business owners are going to ultimately exit their business? 100%. Right? Either vertically or horizontally. They're all going out, carried out on their sword. So this is something that I think is top of mind with every single business owner. As a firm, we are incredibly objective. If a client says, hey, my objective is I want to pass the business to my kids, terrific, great planning engagement, tons of opportunities, okay? If they say, no, I want to sell to a third party, I want to sell to an ESOP, I want to sell to my management team, great, we have Equity Strategies Group. 100%. And I tease my investment bankers sometimes because, they're a hammer looking for a nail.
Yeah, right.
Right? If they do private equity recaps, guess what? They walk into a room. You need one, you need one, you need one, right? If they specialize in ESOPs, guess what? Everybody in the room is getting an ESOP. We are, I think, the only objective advisor in this space who can help a client regardless of which exit path they choose. And are they prepared? Right? So this is not just dollars and cents. This is as much, if not more, emotional than it is about the dollars and cents. And the client and the advisor, and here's where that long-term advisory relationship comes into play. Here's where doing the planning in advance. Here's where thinking through maybe what does life post-exit look like? What is that owner going to do to be productive and fulfilled in the weeks and months and years ahead?
Because if you don't do that, you can do an M&A deal and we'll do all the work and in the 9th hour or 11th hour, the client realizes what his life's going to look like, and
that's
he goes,
right.
I'll pass.
I've had that.
Well, it's true.
But better to know now than then,
That's my point.
and that's why M&A deals.
At the beginning,
That's why they blow up. That's why our closing, when a client starts down the path to sell their business, it's 80 or 90%, whereas across the industry, it's more like 20%. Why? Because they haven't done the planning. They haven't had the emotional intelligence to ask the right questions to understand. This is why when they, God forbid, they try to sell the business on their own without an investment banker, now it's, 1 in 100 chance the deal's going to close. If it does close, they're probably leaving millions of dollars on the table and paying a hell of a lot more income taxes than they should have.
Right.
So what happens, Frank, is that a business owner, right? I've been running this business 20, 30, now 40 years. I'm going to sell. And he's like, who am I after I sell?
Yeah.
Forever in this town, everybody's known me. I started that business. I got 500 employees. I'm so.
My employees are my fan base.
My identity is so tied up in it. And if you ignore that and just say, hey, we're going to get $40 million for your business. And he's
kind
like,
of hollow.
Okay, it doesn't really matter because I don't know who I am the next day. My business card used to say who I was. Now I'm like a golfer. Now I'm like,
and that gets old.
It gets old.
For a lot of these entrepreneurs.
So in that planning process, that's part of it, this kind of emotional IQ about what is it that you're going to do now so that in 5 years when we bring in Equity Strategies Group, you're actually emotionally ready to sell, not just financially ready to sell. That's a difference thing that
and it might also change this. It might also change the type of M&A deal that you do because no
doubt.
Like for me, like my wife says to me, "Well, you're never going to retire." I'm like, "Well, probably not, but I just want to work differently."
Yeah.
Right. Like I want to go hunting in the afternoons. Right. Work in the mornings, go hunting in the afternoons, or whatever. I'm not golfing, but not really. And that's a different kind of transaction versus because I think a lot of people think when they hear M&A, oh, it's a one and done, and you're out.
No,
but there's
doesn't
all sorts
have to
of
and there's so many other variables to it. As an example, there are people that will take $10 million less in a deal if they're selling it to the right person because they know their employees are going to be taken care of the right way.
Right.
As opposed to a P&E firm or a PE firm that comes in and goes, you know what?
That's right.
We can turn this business over in 3 years by cutting 20% of the staff and doing this and that and other little shortcuts that might make sense on a balance sheet.
That's
but
right.
to the guy that created it, he's like, that's a travesty.
Right.
You're desecrating something.
Let everyone
I spent 40 years on this, and you're gonna trash it in 3 years.
We helped clients through a situation recently where the family there was a lot of infighting. Right, mom and dad wanted to slow down and retire. The one son was in his 40s and was still charging ahead and wanted to grow the business. The other brother wanted to work one part of the business but not be involved in it, and they were at each other's throats. So we were brought in to kind of referee and figure out what to do. Fast forward, and I write about it in my book and in my newsletters, we wound up bringing in the perfect buyer. It was actually, believe it or not, an international family office that bought out the shareholders who desired to be bought out, who kept the people in, the son who wanted to run and open up new divisions, and fed capital into the business for that growth strategy. So it was the right answer for everybody. And we've had instances where we had a case, it was a construction company. They wanted to sell, went out into the market. Construction businesses are funny. Larger construction businesses, and we have some M&A firms that we work with. By the way, I have vetted about 125 firms over the years. And Lincoln also, we have an approval process. We have 20 firms that we've approved and put on our platform. And we have all of the right hold harmless agreements, confidentiality agreements to protect us and the advisor. Because if a deal ever, we haven't never had a problem, but if there ever was an issue, we want to make sure everyone's protected. So Equity Strategies Group is not an outside business activity. It's not some rogue activity. This is a legitimate, compliance approved initiative within Lincoln.
I think that point is important if we can just talk about that for a second because part of growing a business, right, is also, the other part of that is protecting your business. And we were talking before the show started about some of the mistakes that advisors make when they trip over an opportunity, but they know they can't do it, so they refer it out to somebody that they know, bowling buddy or golfing buddy, even though they're not going to get paid a fee. Maybe they are going to get paid a fee, but it's going to be sort of like backdoor. That's a serious issue. And so
FINRA has a lot to say. I mean, I don't like to be the compliance heavy. I'd rather lead with our value add, which is significant. But FINRA and your broker-dealer have a lot to say in terms of if you're selling a company, it could be deemed as a private securities transaction, or it could be deemed selling away. So there are a lot of minefields in terms of doing this and whether you receive a finder's fee or not. We do pay a finder's fee. So
but I think my point to the audience really is if you're
be careful.
Be careful out there. Be careful out there, right? Hill Street Blues. Be careful out there. I think our audience.
they're mature enough. Yeah.
I think we all are. But it's really important that if that happens and you stumble across a client that's going to do a transaction, you don't feel confident, you're at a firm that you can't get involved with. Your point was tell that client to talk to their CPA, and their CPA should be able to refer them to. If you refer them to an investment banking firm and you're not getting paid anything, and it goes south for some reason,
you can still be liable.
You still be liable. So
unless you have a structure, a platform, and all the appropriate paperwork, and and there's a client profile, there's disclosure, all of this is done above board.
So how do you? So I'm a financial advisor. I love this. I'm listening to the show, and I'm like, yes, sign me up for this. Right? You must start working with advisors on their first transaction, right? They call you up, and it's as you said, I got a guy.
I got a guy.
Right. How does that go, and how do you coach them to have that conversation? Maybe it's maybe it started with planning, maybe they've done something, but somewhere there's this question where the light bulb has gone off, and they realize there's some opportunity here. Right. In our local marketplace, I won't use the name of the firm, but I just heard recently someone did a transaction with it was like a farmer's market, right?
Yeah.
The business sold for $75 million, some kind of farmer's market. And the commission was the commission to the advisor was close to $400,000, right? But the advisor had a relationship with that client, right? But at some point, the advisor had to have an opening conversation.
Right.
So what do you say when the advisor calls you and says, I got a guy, I don't know where to start. Right. So what do you say? How do you coach these advisors?
Yeah. So a lot of the I got a guy. I get a lot of calls from advisors, and I got a guy who wants to sell his business or raise capital, or they think an ESOP might be a good thing. Can you help? And the answer is, well, great. Let's get some more data. Right. So if the advisor has some financial statements and some background on the client, terrific. If not, what I'll recommend is let's do a Zoom meeting. Me, you, and your client, always with the advisor. If an advisor says, hey, Dan, here's, call this guy. Sorry, Frank. No. You're the relationship. This is your client. I'm an invited guest. I'm here to help. So we'll do a Zoom. And in that initial Zoom, I will ask 30, 35 questions. It sounds conversational. It doesn't sound like an interrogation, but I'm taking data and I'm taking copious notes. And I want to gauge a lot of things. What is their goal? What is their timing? What exit paths have they tried? And, do you have children? Yeah. How old are your kids? 35 and 40. Are they interested in the business? I want to know all this stuff. And then I'm going to start asking about, products and services, competition, obviously getting into the financial aspect and try to figure out their EBITDA and their add backs and, what would life look like? So we'll have that whole conversation. At the end, I'll request financial statements that they'll be more comfortable. And then what we do is we put together what we call a marketability assessment. And it's kind of like a business valuation, only better, meaning it looks at that business through the lens of an investment banker and through the lens of a prospective buyer, as opposed to, there's a lot of these business valuation calculators and templates, business valuation in a box or whatever, which is based on historical, looking in the rear view.
Like a pitch book?
A pitch book is when an investment banker is trying to get hired. So it's not a pitch book. It is, 10, 12, 16 pages long. And a lot of it is talking about the industry, the valuation metrics in that industry. If I hear one more time, my business is worth, X times EBITDA, that is such an oversimplification and it's dangerous, right? There's so many other qualitative factors, right? Why did two businesses with the same EBITDA, one sold for 25, one sold for 50? But they had the exact same EBITDA. Why did one sell for twice as much as the other? So we want to get into what are those premiums? How do we get your client that premium that they deserve? So anyway, the marketability assessment is one of the deliverables.
We might talk about the cost of that too.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
There should be a cost to that because really we're
putting hours into it.
Right. But the other thing is, which I don't know if the audience just picked up on because I picked up on it. This topic that we're talking about doesn't have to be, the client wants to sell at the end of the year. It's the conversation you should be having with your client
whenever they're ready.
Before they even think about selling, because
5 years away from selling.
Right, but
they got to position themselves.
Right, doing the business valuation and having the owner understand, and I've done this myself, right? Having owner risk, right? Spreading out over, like having the owner understand you need to do these things, spread your risk out, do this, do that. That's going to increase the value of your business
absolutely
over the next 5 years. It's giving them a roadmap to better valuation, which you're providing value, so you should get charged. You should be able to get paid on that.
So as not to create any barrier to entry, okay, we could very easily charge $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 to prepare this marketability assessment.
Sure.
We do it on a complimentary basis. Did I say free? Complimentary. So we don't charge the client, we don't charge the advisor because we want to be invited to the party, right? We want a seat at the table. So we'll prepare it and we'll come back and we don't blow smoke. We don't come back and say, your baby's beautiful and you're going to sell it for $150 million. In fact, we tend to be conservative. So I'll give you a quick example. We just closed a transaction in July. Russ was very instrumental in this case. And we did all the planning around it. Frankly, I didn't even think it was going to be an equity strategies group opportunity because the owner had tried to sell with another investment banker 4 years ago and failed. And he kind of had his tail between his legs a little bit. So we came in and did all the other planning around it, the cash flow, the retirement analysis, the estate planning. They needed all that work. And then we circled back to the business succession. Why
did it fail?
Because I think the investment banker who he hired was a generalist. He was not a specialist.
And that's an industry niche.
Right.
Space.
Last week he sold the farmer's market, then he sold a medical practice and now he's selling, a business automation business, right? So he didn't have any areas of specialty. And that's how the conversation shifted because I have investment bankers. Why do I have 20 firms? And many of those firms have 10 or 12 different practice silos.
Got it.
So we have specialists in almost every industry. One of my investment banking guys, I heard him on a podcast being interviewed by our client's industry as the expert.
Oh, right.
So I forwarded that interview to the client. He was blown away. I said, I can put together a meeting. He's one of our approved guys. So we drove up. It was Connecticut. It was close by. We spent a whole day. The owner and his management team were blown away by the depth of knowledge and the tombstones. In other words, other deals he's closed in that industry.
Yeah, they were like, I know that firm.
Yeah, the name drop. I'm just sitting back. I'm sitting back laughing at the name dropping. And, long story short, he winds up retaining our investment banker. When he went to market 4 years ago, his expectation was $18 million. We did a marketability assessment. Now, granted, the business grew a bit. And we came back with a conservative range of 23 to 27 million. Wound up closing 6 months later, which is record time in this world, for almost $40 million.
Wow.
Most of it cash at closing.
Because I would bet you the client said, if you can give me 25, I'd be better than a pig in shit.
He was done.
Right?
He was done because he was in his late 60s. He was burnt. His father, who actually owned the majority, was in his 90s.
Oh, jeez. Right.
Yeah. Okay, so they were done.
Done, right.
Check, please. And, we got it done. And, there was a very handsome finder's fee, back to what you're saying before. So the investment banker earned their fee, and every deal is different. But, the investment banker might get 3-4%. Usually it's a small percentage up to a certain benchmark that we all agree is a layup. And then there's a bonus structure. Hey, if they hit the ball out of the park, they're going to get more. Okay. Right. And the client's fine writing a bigger check because he's keeping 95, 96% of that overage.
Of a number that he never thought he would even ever
knock
get.
yourself out. So
it's like, here you go.
Right.
So on that deal, the
advisor gets how much of that?
Well, so the investment banker earned.
Right now, my audience is thinking, okay, so how much would I make on that deal?
Yeah. The investment banker made $1.5 million, and the Lincoln advisor got 10%. Wow. So $150,000. GDC, through the grid, see you at the trip, see you at the beach. So all the honors and recognition credits. But more importantly,
Well,
I
you get
think,
assets.
is they got all the
Yeah,
assets.
exactly. That you're going to charge 1% on.
So
it.
that, yeah, so that the AUM.
Is Dan and the other?
Well,
Right.
and and also, there are some things in there, annuities and
That's what
alternative
the-
investments
that's where I
and the
for
referrals
audience-
and the goodwill, and now
Right,
the
but I
accountant
think
loves us,
for
the attorney loves
audience-
us.
For my audience, I think that M&A is spicy and sounds great. I used to talk about lead with lending when I was a director. Lead with lending, go after high net worth clients because they want lower interest rate products. They can go out, but the end result isn't the product, isn't the loan, it's great to get $150,000 on an M&A transaction. It's the 30, 40, 50, 80, $100 million in assets that you get that you can then put in a wrap or do other things with it, right?
Yeah.
And it's better off in your, under your practice than somebody else's. Because if another banker comes in, you're never seeing that business, or maybe you get half of it, or they'll give you a token 30% of it, or something like that.
If they sell their business, and you're not part of that process,
zero.
it's the beauty pageant.
Yeah.
It's you and 5 other firms, and everybody's coming in with their, their pitch.
Yeah.
But if you lead the client on that journey, and you're sitting in the seat next to them on that roller coaster ride, and there will be ups and downs.
Yeah.
Okay? As they say, every good deal craters at least 3 times, right? So, and who are they going to reach out to when a deal hits a roadblock? They're going to reach out to their financial advisor for some help.
Right.
And then when offers come in, who's going to help them evaluate it? And then there's all the tax planning. And then, Russ, they're going to say, well, how does this fit into my cash flow? How does this fit into my estate plan? Hey, before we even do this, should I take some of the company's stock?
Maybe I should give it to a charity. Maybe I should get some deductions for that.
Because
put it in a slat.
Because having a business that's worth $50 million, right? It's different than actually having $50 million.
Hell yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it may be worth $50 million, but he's making, $1 million a year or whatever, right? Which is a different.
He feels poor.
He feels poor, right? All of a sudden he's sitting on $50 million, which is real dollars.
They don't know what to do with that wealth. I've had clients say, what am I going to do with all this money?
Right.
Well, you know what? There's some of my partners at Lincoln Financial can help you figure out. But they honestly don't. They've never had liquidity.
People can come out of the woodwork. They can start not being smart with their spending.
Oh,
There's
we've seen that.
They can make mistakes with all the time. So
we've seen
talk about.
But hear how Dan started that whole talk about that business and selling for $40 million. It was that he and Chris, the partner on that case that I helped introduce them to, did all the comprehensive planning. They went in and charged a fee. They showed the gap between what they have and what they could have in all these other areas, none of which was you're going to sell your business.
Got it.
That wasn't top of mind for the client, wasn't top of mind for them as advisors, and they went out and did a great comprehensive holistic plan.
Right.
That starts winding down, and they're like, by the way, maybe we're interested in selling the business. Oh,
Right.
whole new discussion. Now
it.
there's a whole new track that we're going on.
As a manager in the dugout, if I sent someone up to bat and they struck out 3 times in a row, might I think about putting a pinch hitter in, right?
Right.
So if the other investment banker swung and missed, is that in my client's best? And he was a loyal guy. Oh, he still checks in with me every 6 months or a year, but it didn't work the first time.
Yeah.
Is it, and we had to tell the story differently. But what I wanted to come back to, Russ, and I know you could address this better than anybody, is every one of our clients, when we meet them, say, hey, I got the best lawyer in town. I have the best CPA firm in town. What do I need you for?
Yeah. So I mean, that question, in the high net worth market in particular, you tell me somebody that's 60 years old that doesn't have an accountant and attorney and documents and everything all that. So how do you get hired in that market?
Yeah.
Well, you get, to Dan's point, you get the information on that person, and then you show them what they don't know. So I'll debrief their document, or our team will debrief their documents. Wills, trusts, buy-sell agreements, their investment statements, their insurance policies. We'll debrief all that. There's no charge. Now we're coming back out showing you, hey, did you know that your document leaves your assets in an unprotected way to your kids? And you're going to go, what are you talking about?
Right.
And I'm going to say, you're 50 million, 2 kids, 25 million each. 5 years later, one of them gets divorced. Your now ex-son or daughter-in-law gets 12.5 million. When you put the agreement together, that document, is that what you intended to have exposed to risk? And you're going to go, I had no idea.
Right.
Right.
I'm going to say, look, I'm not saying we're working together, but if we did, is that something you want to make sure we address? If you're loaded as an advisor to go out and have that kind of conversation in 4 or 5 different planning areas with a high net worth individual, they're going to sit there and go, no wonder Dan said we should sit down together. I've never seen anything like that.
Right.
It's specific to me. It's my dollars. It's my documents. You're disturbing me on all these things. I get it. I need to get them fixed. How much did you say it was going to cost for us to work together? I've shown you the value.
So if you've shown them that, if you've already done that,
Yeah.
right? This is the question that my audience is thinking about, because that's what I'm thinking about. If you've shown them that document already, then what are you charging them for? What are you charging them $100,000 for?
All we're showing on that is the problems.
Okay.
And we're asking you, are they worthwhile to fix? And then that's...
So you're not saying, here's your problem, and here's the thing, here's what you need to do. And bring
Not
it
yet.
in.
So
Right.
I don't know enough
Right.
about you yet.
That's malpractice,
Got it,
right?
got it,
I
There's
got
a
a thumbnail
process.
sketch of your situation. I'm going to tell you, here's what you need to do.
We're going to spend
Give $10 million to a
time.
private foundation. Move the. It's like I don't know what even matters to you yet.
Here's some blind spots that we're seeing that you need to address.
Yes, and we
Right.
think that there's room here, there's reason enough here for us to work together. What do you think? And I just
Yeah.
showed you in an hour and a half what
Right.
those 10
And
or
then,
15
and then when you're
things
doing the
are.
planning component of it, and if they're a small business owner, eventually the conversation is going to come up with
what's your exit
what's your
strategy?
exit strategy, what's your
And
succession?
again, whatever it
And they go,
is,
nothing right
we
now.
can help you.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it might be that I've got a buy-sell agreement with my business partner, and we go, wait a second. It says it's book value, and it's
Right.
based on 1999's book value.
And your C corporation is redeeming the stock, so there's no step up in basis.
Right.
So your partner's gone, you redeem it, you have his whole basis. You say, it's no fun anymore without Fred around. I'm going to sell. You're going to get crushed in capital gains taxes. No one's having these conversations with them.
Right.
Nobody even has the knowledge, much less knowing what they're going to say and how they're going to communicate it.
So you've been
That's
really-
what our team does.
Right.
Right.
So I'm going to take it back another step, right?
Yeah.
I'm an advisor.
Yeah.
I've identified a prospect, someone that I've been playing golf with, whatever, every Saturday, right? Who I know has got money, right? How do I start that conversation?
Well, that goes
How do
to the
I say
approach.
I have a team,
Right.
right? Because I know that's your specialty.
Yeah, that's the approach talk.
Our entire firm, when Dan's talking about approach talk,
I hope, by the way, you're writing this down if you're in
I break it into 3 things.
We're going to
right?
recite the approach
How
talk.
are you sourcing somebody in your aspirational market? That's to your question right there. I got a guy I golf with. Okay, that's one way of sourcing.
Right.
But how do you source the next 5 clients you're going to get
That's right.
in your aspirational market
Introductions.
with a filter?
Yes.
So that you're not just anybody that comes to you, you start working with.
Right.
How do you protect your own time? So
Right.
sourcing, how do I source somebody? If I'm in front of the right guy, what's my story? Right? I golf with you. Hey, Frank, can we sit down and have a little discussion? And you're like, sure. And I'm like, I don't really know what I'm going to say. I'm with a Fortune 500. Here's our pie chart. It's better than their pie chart. Our analysts are better than your analysts. Do you want to work together?
That's not going to move the
I'm
needle.
just going to
right.
smile.
Yeah.
It's like those are all just table stakes.
Yeah.
Right.
So what's my story? Which everybody in our firm has a story that's fundamentally the same. Right? When I said 10 to 20 basis points of a person's net worth exclusive of their life insurance is how we discuss the fee. If you ask Dan to talk about it, he's going to say the same thing.
Right.
If you ask any of those 200 advisors in private wealth services, what do you charge for a fee? They're going to say that same thing. So the second is, 1, how do I source somebody? 2, what's my story? How does that
And
differentiate
it has the
me?
preamble,
Real
the
time.
areas of planning, the upfront contract. You're hitting on the how I get paid, but there's so many other pieces to
So,
that talk.
First time that I'm with somebody, right? Mike, first off, Dan, thanks for introducing me to Frank, right? Frank, appreciate you taking my call and us sitting down together. A couple of things I want you to know before we take another step. 1, everything we're going to talk about is confidential. If it leaves this room, it's going to be because you asked me to speak to somebody on your behalf. This is what everybody, all those 200 are going to say virtually those same words.
Okay.
Right.
Second, my assumption is this. You've been provided with many of the ingredients of a financial plan. Wills, trusts, banks, accounting, tax advice, investment advice. Is that the position you find yourself in? 100% of the people in our market
say
are going
yeah.
to say yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, great.
Got it all
That puts
done.
you in the same position as all of the people that I talk about. We're going to spend the rest of our time together helping you understand why 9 out of 10 people I talked to said, let's get together again. So that's that preamble that Dan's talking about. That's the introduction to the story that we tell.
Okay.
The rest of that story is me getting information from you about your business, how it's structured, how many owners are there, what's the value on it, what about your real estate holdings, what about your investments, qualified and non-qualified. First meeting we've ever had together. You're going to tell me that information because Dan's reputation with you is trust me. I'll get all those dollars and cents in that meeting. And in that meeting, I'm going to point out to you the shortcomings of the planning that you've done or not done.
And this is without seeing document one. This is just based on a verbal discussion and that initial approach talk. You'd be surprised how forthcoming people are.
Sure.
Very.
You think they're going to be very close to the vest. Most, the preponderance of people, once they realize you're a player, they're going to start giving you information. The biggest challenge is they don't know how things work.
That's right.
Right.
For a fleeting moment when they were in the lawyer's office, they kind of sort of remember how their will with generation skipping provisions, how their buy-seller. Once they got out to the car and they went to lunch, they forgot 99%.
Right.
So back to your question. You're out there, you're golfing with somebody. What do I say? That you, if you were the advisor, would be coming to me, and we would be prepping you for that discussion.
Right.
What Dan's calling it an approach talk, which is our initial meeting with a client. What do we want to do? How do we want to ask them? What information do we need? Once we have that information, we're going to disturb that person about what they have and what they could have. That's how we differentiate ourselves. Next, Dan just said it. We don't have the documents. So we have that first meeting, you're disturbed about a few things. I say, let's get back together in 2 or 3 weeks. Here's what I need to make that meeting valuable.
Right.
I need your will and trust. I need your investment statements. I need your business tax returns.
That's the goal of the first meeting, is to get a second meeting and get agreement on the documents.
And then is that what you charge them?
So, no,
Not yet. So we got to do a proposal.
Now we're going to take all that information in. We have 50 people that support our advisors in the roughly
Our
those top
National
200.
Planning Department
That's right. It's called NPI, National Planning
Institute now.
So that group is going to analyze those documents, not just give you back something. You're like, hey, here's your will and trust. Here's what it does. Here's what it says. How do you use that information to convince you that you need to hire us?
Right.
So that's an engagement proposal. Most firms' engagement proposal will say, I'm with XYZ company. You've heard our name for 100 years.
Here's what we have in
Here's
client
why you
assets.
should work for
Here's
us.
how big
Right.
Here's a 4-color brochure. You'll love working with
Right.
us. We got great analysts.
Yeah.
Ours is nothing like
That
that.
doesn't work in the high net worth marketplace.
Who cares?
It's got to be specific.
So now I'm specific and I'm using your details and showing you the consequence for this is $250 million. The consequence for this is 250 grand.
Right.
If you don't fix
Quantify.
this, you're going to disinherit
Quantify
your
it.
kids. If you don't do this, your business is going to sell for half of what it's worth.
And then they're basically going, which is what I would say is, okay, so what's it going to cost me for you to fix this?
And I already told you at the first meeting, it's going to be 10 to 20 basis points. Now
And
I
I'm
come
gonna
back
sign
with
a
the
check.
details.
There you go.
Exactly.
That's right.
Fix it.
And at that point, you get hired.
and
Which is
you're,
why I like working with small business owners because they don't mess
They're
around.
decisive.
and you
Yeah.
almost never are not hired. You're almost always hired. You have that first meeting, you get that data, you have our team go through it, we prep it together. When I say prep it, we're role playing everything that you're going to say as an advisor.
Right.
And not because I'm the best there ever has been. You can hear Dan's got a lot of expertise in these areas.
What if the advisor feels not confident enough? What if he says, well, hey, listen, I can get the first meeting. I don't know if I feel confident enough
Yeah.
to, and I can speak for myself when I'm an advisor.
Sure.
I made a mistake and I approached somebody very early on
Right.
who had a lot of money,
Right.
Yes.
and I basically
Oh.
said the wrong things.
You can call in the cavalry.
And then you're busted.
And,
Yeah.
And it's game over.
Right.
And
The
I was-
facade.
and I was done after that.
And you can never go back.
And I could never go back, and I blew it because I went too early
Yeah.
with not enough ammunition.
Right.
And
So
blew
if
it.
we're talking with somebody and we get to that point and there's kind of this joint discovery where you're like, I appreciate all the help.
By the way, that
all
was
the
my
prep.
father-in-law, by the way. So.
Ah,
Talk about can't go back.
you might get a second at that. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, but you get to that point where you're like, this might be a little over my head.
Right,
I'm
right.
not really too comfortable. What I'm going to say to you is, look, we can prep all we want. Maybe on this particular case, in that particular market, maybe you want to consider bringing somebody like Dan in to work
Right.
that case with you.
Or any number of guys across the
Any
country.
number of
We have a
guys
lot of
across the
highly
country.
trained
Right.
people who specialize and live and breathe in this
Depending on the
market.
industry, the
So that's where
location.
that's where I was going with that. And I know we're getting listen. We're gonna go over time. I don't really care because this is gold. This is
Okay.
great stuff here.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.